Right. Good evening, Namibia. Today was the State of the Nation Address 2022. And as a custom, there is a need to do a quick reflection. So, in this evening, in our studios, I'm joined by the leader and chief change campaigner. Him on his right is Honorable Taramotu, the parliamentary spokesperson, flanking the LCCC on his left is our deputy leader and chief strategist. Apologies for possible protocol hiccups. Right, and my name is Enias Mvula, the national spokesperson of the Landless People's Movement. So, quickly, on the State of the Nation address, we can start with Honorable Swartboy. What is your reflection?
Well, thank you very much and good evening to everybody. Our reflection really is quite mixed. On the one hand, we welcome the announcement that the disability grant will be increased to about 1,300. That is good. That is what LPM has been saying. There are other things that the president has mentioned that are literally copy-paste initiatives from the LPM manifesto, which is fine. I mean, Youth Innovation Fund, some things we've spoken about. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, SONA has said they started with it, but we actually included it in our manifesto. And it was interesting that they indicated first that they will capitalize it with a seed amount of $50 million Namibian dollars, but today the president actually said that it would be 300 million. So we welcome that as well. What was striking was that in terms of real substance and in terms of addressing the structural economic bottlenecks that need to be addressed to move society forward and to grow the opportunity for many Namibians to move, particularly into the middle class, we saw that there was no class agenda that was particularly spoken of. We saw that there was therefore no real focus on addressing the agrarian question that we urgently so need, given not only good rains and the Nekerdal Dam that is just storing water, but given the global pandemic of corona that has devastated the ability of states to do freer trade in terms of food and so on, and with the constant question of food, fuel, and feed that are challenging us. We have had this crisis in 2007, 2010. We are now again experiencing, with the rise of oil prices, the subsequent increase in food prices, and we are not a producer country, which we should have already been. And so much of what is being sold about re-imaging youth and opportunities for young people, when you actually confront the president and his cabinet, these issues, they become silent. It was interesting that the questions through statements that I posed to the president that I South Africa solved. And if we have to learn anything, there is a neighbor out there. You have to move from a pre-capitalist farming and agrarian setup to a heavily capitalized agrarian system which supports capitalist industrialization. There is no magical formula. There is no shortcut to this reality. So the speech was lacking in terms of a vision, a direction. It was lacking in terms of addressing current short-term and long-term challenges. It was not much to take home from.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Honorable Sabeb, uh, in your reflection, perhaps you would also like to include the question of, or rather, perhaps not a question, but really, some people have been wondering where the real pragmatic plan of implementation is, because it doesn't seem to have featured anywhere in the speech.
Yes, precisely because there is no structure or a plan that was presented by the president.
Yes.
Hence, he over concentrated on what they could have done and put much of the blame on COVID 19. Because if you rightly analyze, you'll also realize that he sort of talked as if COVID 19 was in Namibia since 1990. That's what I got. At one stage, he rightly analyzed it, mentioned people how we lost productive people in the country that could have added value to the economy. And then he talks about other things like he attended 22 organ of security troika meetings or so on inside. Imagine bringing in administrative things. Like I went to attend a meeting in Lilongwe,
Yes.
and then you want to cascade it to say it was, well, meetings are good. That's where you discuss plans, maybe sign agreements and so on. But when you give a State of the Nation address, you don't spend so much on administration. How many meetings you have attended. Imagine if the president could have told us how many cabinet meetings he had last year and how many other small meetings he had last year. It wouldn't matter.
Yes.
What matters is the practical outcomes of such meetings. Now, one other issue is the continental free trade agreement. He talked about it, but what are the accompanying policies? How do we get and seize advantage of that? Because we are facing huge economies like Angola, South Africa, Kenya, for example, Tanzania, Uganda, their economies or their SMEs are thriving. So I would have liked the president to expand. The other part was on the agriculture, the capitalist agriculture, how we could have used that to create industries and manufacturing sector. Much of the deregulation, trade liberalization motions have taken place, neoliberal policies that we are operating in, but now concentrated, let's say, in urban areas too. Create those in LPM an idea, because we talk especially about the youth fund and so on.
Yes.
So, but what will be the seed capital be? How do you have an ineffective institutions like the National Youth Council and the Department of Youth and the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and then you want to talk about entrepreneurship?
Yes. They seem to be, sorry to interject, they seem to be pretty much of a reliance on to the administrators, or we could call them the ministers.
Yes.
By the president, but so far things haven't really been that effective. I mean, the implementation itself, and this seemed to still continue. Is that a correct observation?
Yes, that's a problem. The human resource that you got. You can't want to move ministers in the first place because you will need in this 21st century in this globalized world. You will need state of the art people, well resourced, well read,
Yes.
that are able to implement policies in a short span of time. Because as a president, you only 5 years. Already we've lost 2 years. Now, how do you overcome that? You can't now come and blame everything on COVID-19. Other countries, if you talk about the people who laugh at you practically, then you have the national development plans. Again, you have the don't know where to focus. Because you wake up, you have this plan, you have other plan. And if you have everything all over,
Yes.
you got nothing at the end of the day.
And I think you are correct, and this is what I if the president was not the one giving the speech, he would have also been asleep and so on. So it really Americans would say, and it's actually sad because you can actually expect from the budget debate that will ensue, that will have more of the same. Remember, these people think that development is only building infrastructure, roads,
The architecture seems to actually lack foresight when it comes to long-term.
It does, and I think Utara can articulate. She has spoken
Honorable.
about it quite a bit, but the governance architecture is not up to the current challenge. Sadly, those that you see in the ruling party,
Yes.
nobody inspires any confidence of an ability to read new content, to do new comparatives, and move Namibian society forward. Their thinking is not at that level. They are thinking about their own survival. That is unfortunately where it is.
Honorable Utara, thank
Yes.
you, Ultrapc. You are known to be a proponent of pushing the agenda of youth development. So $44 million has been availed through the Development Bank. And one wonders whether it's really what matters is the size of the fund or the policies that need to, that need to be relaxed, especially when it comes to the question of collateral. But if you could include that in your reflection of the whole SONA process today.
Okay, thank you. I don't like just focusing on youth because I don't want to be a youth leader, but I want to be a national leader that happens to be young.
Right.
So to unpack the SONA, I just don't want to focus on the youth issues. Thank you
Very
for
well.
actually elaborating on that point. But if you look at my analysis on the SONA, would be firstly trying to understand the purpose of SONA. SONA is not just for the president to be held accountable by parliament and to address the nation, but it's to give an idea on where we are going as a country.
Yes.
Giving policy implementation, giving feedback that he has given. But if you look into the development scheme, we have a slow-paced development in terms of he stated that he has serviced 1,278 plots and also built about 700 toilets, which were then constructed in rural areas, which then raises a very critical issue on how serious is the administration and the government in terms of addressing rural transformation. You cannot say that 1,200 plots were serviced. How effective is then the government's redistributive policy in terms of the land reform? We are slow. We are not on in terms of the demands of the land hungry and the demands of the landless people.
Yes.
1,200 is nonsense, basically. If you also look into the nature, the nonchalant nature of the president, we, like what my LCCC said earlier, we have mixed feelings. Of course, at first he did share sentiments on how he wants an equal Namibia and how he's proud to be Namibian and how this SONA is really, to him, was one of the best SONAs in that we could actually share ideas as Namibians. But if you, on paper, sort of how Namibians' policies are good on paper, but not in reality. On paper, it was administration of the speaker. He led to the downfall of the SONA in terms of the decrease in quality. He did not allow members of parliament to fully articulate themselves to ensure that the concerns of Namibians are really addressed.
So it was somehow of a rushed process.
It was a rushed process, contradicting what the president is saying in sharing ideas. I mean, even the LCCC was not allowed to complete his speech. Certain members of parliament were given that privilege. Others were just said 2 minutes, 2 questions, which already shows how the dictatorial tendencies of the speaker and how he's really bringing down the quality and the role of parliament to actually hold the president accountable in such an important program. Moving back to the statement of what the president said, he stated first, he would not really answer. He had vague answers. He would not answer in terms of giving a concise response to what people wanted to hear. Let's look into how he answered the issue around the increment of salaries for civil servants. He firstly stated that the economy has increased and that we are doing better than we were before, and that these downgraded statements are just obviously political gimmicks. And he also questioned the authenticity of some of these reports.
Of the Moody rating, for
when
example.
he was asked, every question he was asked in terms of increment of wages, in terms of subsidizing smallholder farmers to ensure that production is improved,
Yes.
in the agricultural sector to then deal with food security issues. He then gave the one answer: there's no money, there's no money, there's no money. Again, you say that the economy has improved. But then when it comes to showing policy implementation that would then reflect that growth, there's no money. There's contradiction in his statement. He was all over the place. Again, like what my two leaders said, that he would really give crumbs of the bread to try and put crumbs and feed to the nation, being all over the place. Even in terms of international issues, he didn't really deal with domestic issues in terms of the Zambezi question, border tension issues, the possible land grabs that could come from now this new discovered natural resource of oil, and how investors, in fact, he's very controversial in interview with the Al Jazeera, where he stated that the land is sort of not ours, but the resources are not ours, but belong to whoever can afford it. Again, that neoliberal concept of the president in terms of investors first, Namibians later, really shows. And when it comes to Parliament, where he's now supposed to give answers to how he prioritized Namibians in terms of the improvement of livelihoods,
Yes.
there's a contradiction. And that's why he refused to answer certain questions. He ran around in terms of answering the questions. And when it comes to my final point, when you look at the youth issue that you wanted me to deal with, I think it goes back and leading to also what the Minister of Finance said. We just get a shout out in terms of the policy framework and speeches, but it doesn't really give, like you said, 44 million is not enough for a population that is about 60% of the total population. 44 million for what? And in which sectors? Again, they had a very narrow approach in terms of which industries are prioritized. The infrastructure of just one sports stadium, excluding others, and possible development and construction of others to ensure that we as a country where it's being there is a outflow of resources in terms of catering sports games in Joburg and other countries where we actually lose hundreds and thousands of dollars per game. And he didn't really address those structural issues in terms of ensuring that young people are prioritized in the educational sector. He didn't look at the crisis in education and how the government, together with his cabinet, are going to look at issues to solve it. In fact, last year it was all about COVID. We had ideas left, right, and center about COVID. But now when we have a youth crisis, it's sort of like, yeah, we gave you 44 million. That's enough. That will keep people off the streets, that will educate our masses, that will give business opportunities to young people, which is, for me, it's just mirage, and it's a political gimmick. And I think the president has nothing to offer in terms of that we must the amount that must be offered by Germany together as a country, that was positive, and his outlook on some of the issues on the issues around, I think,
can only invite as many Namibians as possible to come. We will send out our invites and so on to really participate in why this land bill cannot be approved. And with that, we hope to put the land question again in the spotlight. You could see, look, the president has normally, in terms of the constitution, two things to do at a State of the Nation. One is to report back on the activities of the previous year, and secondly, to inform the House about the plans for the forthcoming financial year, and sort of to sell a vision that is pragmatic. On the report back, there was nothing on land except on how 1,000 sanitation facilities that were built, 300 toilets, and so on, which, when you look at the numbers, are actually embarrassingly low. And given the backlog that is so high, and the housing delivery that he spoke about, including low-cost housing that they have built, we were looking at each other and saying, where are these things precisely done? Because what they say and what you go and find on the ground is not always the same in terms of numbers and quality of it. So you can see that SWAPO is out of touch. It is trying to make last week in the debates, and we were just saying, goodness, thank God we left SWAPO party, because we would not have grown. Because the younger generation also in SWAPO is just completely absent-minded and innocent of any capacity and skills. And the longer we keep these people in power, the longer our challenges will only multiply rather, and the more difficult it will be to resolve these challenges in terms of education, the quality. You could see a lot of what the president was also saying is, we are waiting for this report. We've put up a committee. We have done this. We have put up a committee.
Still in that planning.
Still in that planning.
Session,
to look, are we ready for the fourth industrial revolution? And why do you even ask a question, are we ready? Well, you can already answer it forthright and say, we are not ready for it. And as if you have worked for the readiness of the fourth industrial revolution. We have not done it. And you could see he quotes Harambe 2 and then NDP 5, and you say, which document actually takes priority over there? Now it will take half poverty, if at all we can be able to do it under current leadership. So we are in a crisis of leadership. We are in a crisis of existential and survivalist mode, and the country is just unable to move forward. The economy percent.
Perhaps if any comments before we ask the proceed to round off, perhaps?
No, I've rounded off. It's
Oh,
okay.
all right. Yes.
Yes, it is indeed a serious crisis that we are in. You could see there was a position being advertised. I think it was something at Tanzania Boso, and then 8,000 people, or aspirants turned up just for one position that was advertised, and they had to have interviews. 8,000. So it tells you the deep level problems that we are sitting in this country, especially when it comes to how do we reduce or manage to eradicate levels of unemployment,
Yes.
poverty, and inequality, especially urban and rural inequality, the gap between rural, urban women of inequality, poverty levels have increased. So I thought we could really use this opportunity to chart immediate short-term gains that we could. Green hydrogen and those things are long-term. It has been awarded to huge international players.
Yes.
That even if it comes, I will only go into benefit in terms of catering services or what is it that we are going to. So
So the whole value
defined.
chain is not very clear
It's
how
not
it's
clear.
going to.
Even the president himself won't know and won't tell you. It's not clear the whole chain. And we are pinning our hopes so much only on green hydrogen project to the extent that we think that must have, if it doesn't happen, we would have lost a generation and whole array of policies, especially on agriculture,
Yes.
that we could have used to create other industries and manufacturing sector. So I think our planning is wrong. I have seen the minister, the person at the National Planning Commission, how they try to justify the oil finds and so on, but it's not helping. I think it's time to move away, not only to over market and to over talk about green hydrogen, and also to look at other sectors.
Yes. No, it's actually worrisome that there is no, the risk assessment, the picture on the, it's not really well presented. You don't know what risks we say. We have a prospect, but what are the risks? So that you can determine, how to actually better be prepared instead of just pushing the positive side of it.
I just want to
Okay.
say this, Leader Enios, that
Yes.
at every juncture of your struggle for gaining state power, a political party has not only to have a strategy, but it must also have tactics to achieve the strategy. We have seen for the past 2 years that LPM was very differently conducting its affairs in Parliament. And this year, we have again taken another approach. And that is defined around what are our interests that we want to achieve. And so we carefully analyze at every juncture what our tactics should be to affect and influence change and to have those that must hear what needs to be done to actually hear and listen to what we are saying. So for the past 2 years, we've been very hard on us as it relates to parliamentary work that we're doing and the robustness with which we were doing things. As a result of which we were later charged out and we won court cases and we came back. We are now actually in a review motion against the speaker. We launched the review motion in December and they're trying to have a back and forth and so on. So there is a court case around the decision that they've taken to literally place us on final warning. But for this season, our tactic is necessitated by our strength in the victory that we have achieved in local and regional governance, but also in terms of our growth as a party throughout the country, better and faster than we have experienced in 2019. So increasingly as a party, we are emerging as the party of the alternative way, the party of the new strength and the new vision that and we are drawing from a number of classes, including our middle class. We have to constantly adjust our tactics to achieve optimum buy-in from the largest possible constituents in this country. In other words, we are building a party that has become broad enough that allows us to modify our conduct and our approach in Parliament. And therefore, what you saw today is not only us projecting a much more calm and much more focused approach, while the debate is so narrow and limited, but you also saw that had a sit down with us at our request from their side, and undisputable respect for LPM as a party that is also in government. And on that basis, we have been able to ensure that they listen to us, they take our advice seriously, they take our input seriously. And you could today see the conduct of the president himself also realigning his approach toward us.
Yes.
In fact, he, for us, took a posture of not disagreeing with us or be seen as engaging with us publicly. He listened to what I had to say and he said, well, that's your ideological issue that you're raising. I cannot answer that. You're making a statement. I take note of what you're saying. But many of the things that you are saying, come and do it when win. Our supporters and those who are sympathetic to LPM
Yes.
understand that as a party we are growing.
Viewers, thank you for tuning in and good night.
Thank you.